It's good to see you. My name's Bob Kuebler. I'm the Director of Youth with a Purpose, and I'm taping this video out here in Arizona for the folks back in Buffalo. We're doing a video on mentoring, leadership, and character with the saguaro as our backdrop, and we're going to use the saguaro cactus as a metaphor for your character. This video is being done for the worldwide mentoring and character group in Buffalo for the conference they're having this weekend. Maurice and Pastor T.C. Copeland, we thank for them bringing just the opportunity for young people to learn about character. The saguaro is the largest cactus in the world. Not the particular specimen that's behind me, but in general, this cactus only grows in a Sonora desert out in Arizona, parts of California, and Mexico. And what we're going to do today is examine a saguaro and how it relates to your character. Now, when you look at the saguaro, you can see it's got a lot of arms to it. You can see there's a hole in it, and you can see it's got needles. Now, if you got a friend that is a really good-hearted friend, but they got needles, you're probably not going to hug that friend. You would not hug a saguaro. But the saguaro, what it does for creatures to give new life and nesting is powerful. So today we're going to take a look at the hole itself. We're going to call this the saguaro boot camp. This is your character boot camp. Okay, so this is, just think about your character for a minute in terms of a saguaro. So what we're going to do is focus in on that hole. Let me tell you how the hole is made. A woodpecker comes along and pecks the outside skin of the cactus. Before I go too much further with that, the needles on the outside, they do serve a purpose because the heat in the desert can get up to about 120 degrees in the summertime. Those needles actually help to diffuse some of the heat off the cactus. The other thing about the saguaro, sometimes your life is going to be like a desert. It's going to be a hard, dry, hot place devoid of any nourishment and any water. You got to persevere. You can never give up. And a saguaro never gives up. They grow to be almost 200 years old. So you never give up regardless of the circumstances. You have to persevere. I guess you call that character lesson number 1 from the saguaro, perseverance. You have to persevere. So the hole, when you look at the hole made by a woodpecker, the woodpecker comes out, pecks a hole. There are little bugs underneath the skin, but what he does is he pecks a hole on the outside, then he starts digging down in. The saguaro has a sponge-like material on the inside that actually soaks up the water. And interestingly enough, when it soaks up water, the roots of the saguaro are very shallow except for the taproot. The taproot can go, let's say, 4 to 6 foot deep down in the ground. The other roots are like 4 to 6 inches along the surface. They'll catch rainwater, but folks, it really doesn't rain too much out here in Arizona. My wife has said it may rain six days out of the year. I don't know how many days, but there isn't much rain. When it does rain, the saguaro will swell up and store that water to use it until it rains again. The woodpecker will actually take the fleshy, spongy material of the saguaro, dig it out, and excavate a crater inside a saguaro. The flesh actually dies. The woodpecker is wounding the saguaro. I don't know if a saguaro hurts, but it's actually being wounded. The flesh comes out and it dies. But the saguaro doesn't complain. I've never heard a saguaro complain all the time I've been out here in the desert. What it does is secretes a fluid. The fluid actually makes a callus and it hardens the material inside. The whole process will take up to about a year, but then the woodpecker comes back and it puts a nest in there to raise its young. Goes down into the cavity, can't be seen on the outside. So the saguaro, when it's wounded, doesn't get angry. It doesn't lash back. It often it makes things happen so that there's new life. The secret to brokenness and woundedness, sometimes you got to absorb it. You're not going to get through life without being hurt and without being broken. In my life as a youth director in Buffalo, New York, over 12 years, we've had a lot of pain. Christian Portes was a guy that was very special to me. We used to go into schools together. We do rap music and we would do anti-bullying programs. Christian took a bullet to the head. When you get a bullet to the middle of the head, you're not going to live. He didn't live for too long. You might say that the guy who pulled the trigger is responsible for his death. He did take a plea deal, and the guy has gone to jail for it. But there was a lot of things that I wished I could have done differently. To me, Christian was like a son. And as a father, I love being a father. But I look back on my life, there's so many times I wish I could have been a better father. But I also know that through Christian's life, I'm not going to let him die. I will speak the words about Christian, about his life, about the things that I learned, and I'll take the woundedness that I feel on the inside of Christian's death, and I'll help to keep other young people alive. And when you look at the saguaro, it's got a lot of arms up there. Those arms A saguaro without the arms is called a spear. The more arms they have, the more chances of growing more saguaros. They only grow an inch per year. And when people walk in a desert and kick these puppies, well, they're destroying a lot of years of growth. You're going to grow slow. Your life, sometimes you want things to pass so quickly. You want the pain to go away quickly. It doesn't go away quickly. I'm convinced you're going to carry the pain until you understand the reason behind the pain in the first place. Because pain is designed. It's actually designed by God to give you some wisdom so that you can take forward in your life. Everybody in your life has been designed and put there for a purpose to help you grow. Through brokenness, you're given a greater capacity to love. And how I know that in my own personal life, going through a really bad time of brokenness, I was actually in a church on a Sunday night, sitting in a pew, and I was bawling my eyes out. I mean, guys, it's okay for a guy to cry. There's nothing wrong with that. You got to have a good cry. You let your emotions hang out. Men do cry, all right? Get that through your skull right now. For me, I was bawling my eyes out, and I closed my eyes. But before I did, I had my hands clasped in front of me like this. And as I clasped them and closed my eyes, my hands in my mind's eye became my heart. What happened then, my heart literally broke in two. I was so wasted, my heart was broken in two, and I saw it even when I closed my eyes. But at that point, what I saw was Jesus holding a baby boy, and they both smiled. It was really pretty cool. I was still sad, I was still broken, but they smiled briefly. The boy was Middle Eastern in nature. I could tell by an olive-colored complexion, deep black hair, which I've seen him twice since that time in different areas. And they smiled, and they disappeared that quickly. At that point, what I saw was a golden healing oil began to be poured into the chasm between the two halves of heart. And what happened was, the heart never went back to its original size. It stayed that big. And it was almost like they were glued together by an amber-colored honey fluid. And what I realized about that is that through brokenness, you're given a greater capacity to love. It's no different than when you look at the butterfly. You may have heard the story about the butterfly that somebody tried to help it out of its cocoon, and that butterfly couldn't fly. Because you see what happens, the butterfly needs the struggle, and it forces fluid into the butterfly's wings, enabling it to fly. Without the struggle, the butterfly can't fly. If you look at a diamond, it's made from stress and pressure. We want the easy way in life. We don't want stress and pressure. The diamond is made from stress and pressure. And when you take an oyster and something that irritates it, the oyster secretes a fluid and it makes a pearl. When somebody irritates you, what do? Do you jaw them or do you jewel them? The saguaro is the same deal. There has to be a death before there's new life. The one thing I want to tell you about mentoring is I finish up with the diamond. You got the story. It's the saguaro has to have an excavation and their flesh has to die for the bird to come in and have a nest of new life. We're going to come back to that a little bit later. The butterfly needs the struggle to be able to fly. The diamond needs the stress and pressure to become a beautiful jewel and to become hardened. And the pearl is made from an irritant. You have to be a witness of what's inside your heart. You are, naturally. In fact, let me tell you about mentoring. Every single human being is a mentor. Every single human being is a leader. And here's how. You are either a voluntary or an involuntary mentor. What does that mean? If I volunteer to come into your life and spend time with you and try and impart some good character lessons in your life as we share time together, I'm volunteering my time. I'm a volunteer. Involuntary is kind of like, let's say an 8th grader, he's got some trash from the local fast food joint. He takes it and he throws it on the ground. And maybe the 4th grader walking behind him says, you know what, hey, he throws garbage on the ground. I think I'll throw my garbage on the ground. Or maybe there's a high schooler who's bullying a freshman. The senior bullies the freshman. And when the freshman gets to be a senior, he bullies a freshman. You have become a mentor that's caused bullying. You have become a leader of bullying. You're a leader whether you like it or not. And there's people following in your footsteps. So what's in your heart should actually be evidenced by what you do with your hands. You are a witness whether you like it or not. And witnesses do many, many things. When you look at the top of the saguaro, it's pointing up into an awesome blue sky into this place. You come down, you got some arms, there's new growth on the top. And the other interesting thing about the saguaro, the flowers only come around, let's say, the end of April, May, and June. They only bloom at night. They'll come out in the afternoon, and by noon the next day, they close up. And if they're not pollinated during that time, they will not go to seed. And if they don't go to seed, you don't have more saguaros. So let me slow that down a bit. In the dark is when the flower comes out. In the dark is where bad things happen in life. We're kind of lost. We feel lonely. We feel depressed. It's a dark time. You're almost like a seed underground. Do you ever notice that most seeds have to germinate underground? When you are feeling dark, when you're feeling lonely, you're feeling depressed, you're just a seed underground. You will grow. Your growth could be as near as the next sunrise. Your growth could be near as the next rainfall. One way or the other, you're going to grow. So you've got to be a witness. You've got to let really good things happen in your life. The arms of the saguaro seem like they're reaching out. In fact, if I could pause, sometimes it'd be almost like a comical character with fist up like this. But it's like somebody's reaching out. Some saguaros are a spear that aren't reaching out. You've got to be able to lend a hand to people. Your heart has got to walk out and to be able to help people. In fact, right now I want to tell you that I'm hoping that you're taking some notes. You should never go anywhere without a notepad. I don't care if it's riding on your bike. Don't try to take notes while you're driving your bike. But what I'm saying is, when a thought strikes your head, you've got to write it down. I read a lot of music. I read a lot of books. In fact, I'll show you the books in a minute. But the books and the writings come when I start flowing. I got to write it down. The other thing I want to tell you is on our website, you're going to see our website, youthwithapurpose.org, is going to be on the bottom of the screen. You'll be able to contact us. All of the notes that I'm talking about today are going to be posted on the website under the Saguaro Bootcamp. So if you go to youthwithapurpose.org and you look for the Saguaro Bootcamp, you can get those starting on probably the following Monday after your conference. Those will be posted. So I'm hoping you're taking notes. But if you missed anything, it'll be on there. And if you have any questions, at the end of this segment, our good friend Kobe Lewis, who's a rock star and just mentoring and leadership and knows probably far more than a lot of us do, he'll be able to take some questions. If for some reason you got a question for me, hook us up on a website. But I want to go back to lending a hand. And sometimes it's like you've got to lend a hand, and sometimes you got to pull your hand away. You don't want to struggle. And you don't want bad things to happen to you. But sometimes the very best thing you can do is to let go. If you got a friend that's doing bad things, you've got to know who it is that you should be hanging around with. There was a guy that went to a store. He's driving. His buddy says, "Hey, I got to stop at the store." He says, "All right." So the guy pulls over to the curb. He lets his friend out. The friend jumps back into the car. He says, "Hurry up, go. We got to take off." And the guy driving says, "Why? What's going on?" And he says, "Well, just get going. We got to take off." They get pulled over by the cops a little while later. His buddy went in and pulled off a robbery and shot and killed the store owner. Do you know that the driver also got charged with murder? Now, in that case, I think that eventually they were able to prove that, he had nothing to do with it. But you know what? If you're hanging around with the bad people, hanging around with the wrong people, something is going to rub off and happen to you. Sometimes you've got to cut people loose. In our gym, there's a word called discipline, and most people don't like discipline. It actually comes from a Greek word that means to teach. There was a guy that came into our gym. Now, when you come into our gym and you play ball, you got to watch your language. You got to pull up your pants because you ain't playing no sagging pants in our gym. I don't want nobody dribbling down the court, pulling up their pants as they're going. It just doesn't work, guys. But there was one guy who wanted to use lousy language. We had a code in our youth center that says positive words only are spoken because negative words make people feel broken. Yo, that's how we roll. And if you ain't got something good to say, don't say it. So the dude wanted to use the F word. We're not going with that. So I says, "You got to leave." He says, "I'm not leaving." He decided to make a stand and go against authority. He wasn't leaving. So I went for the light switch. All the guys in the gym know that if I turn the lights off, these lights are so old, it takes like 45 minutes to come back on, so I usually close the gym. So his buddies got him to leave, and he was swearing at me the whole time, all the way down the street. "F you." And when he said that, I says, "I love you, Jeffrey." "F you." "I love you, Jeffrey," all the way down the way. And it was 2 blocks down from the youth center. The next day he shows up, and I says, "You can't come back until I talk to your mom." He says, "She's working." I says, "Well, what time she get done?" He says, "I don't know." I said, let me tell you what I'm going to tell your mom. I'm going to tell your mom that she's a really good mom, that I really enjoy her son, that he's a really good young man, that sometimes we have a beef, but you know what? When we have a beef, we settle it. He handed me his phone in tears, and I told his mom exactly that. Sometimes you've got to make a tough call. Sometimes people might be calling you a snitch, and bad things are going to happen in your life. You've got to make a stand. You know what's right and wrong. And even in your own family, if something is wrong, don't keep doing it. You've got to make a difference in your life. For a lot of years, we've taken a lot of young guys up into the mountains. And up into the mountains, a lot of things can go wrong. You've got to pay attention. You've got to stay away from the edge, and you've got to follow the leader. And in the mountains, every person that we've ever taken into the mountains has always made the top. And when you get to the top, you can see forever. And I'm going to tell you that God just blows you away by what you can see from the top of the mountain. But the problem is a lot of people don't want to listen, and some people want to fool around. They don't want to do the hard things that it takes. There was a mom that called us up and wanted her kids to go mountain climbing. And I says, okay, but I'm going to have a talk with you first to let you know what we expect. We went up the mountain, and two of the young people complained all the way up. They wanted to sit down. I can't do this. This is too hard. But you know what? We'll motivate you all the way to the top. We got them to the top after about 4 hours. And on the way down, they complained and moaned and complained again. And all of a sudden, we get out, and she asked to use the phone. She calls her mom, and she says, I climbed a mountain, Mommy. I climbed a mountain. And she swore she'd never do it again. But a few weeks later, we ran into the mom, and we asked the mom, how's the family doing? The mom says that they went to church, and the pastor says, hey, anybody here got anything? Do you want to tell us about your summer? How'd your summer go? This girl jumped up and yelled out of her skin and says, I climbed a mountain, Mommy. I climbed a mountain. She was excited. When you're going through something hard, you don't want to be going through it. You've got to struggle. The other thing about going through something hard, get used to asking for help. Ask for somebody to give you a hand. Let me tell you something right now that you may not have ever heard before in your life. The way you sit there right now, the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you look is absolutely perfect. And let me give you the proof as to why that's true. There's nobody like you in the past. Nobody. There's nobody like you in the future. Nobody. And there's nobody like you but you right now here in the present. And if you don't become the best you that you are destined to be, designed to be, and purposed to be, then you've wasted you. It's not easy to be what you're supposed to be. And you're not meant to be alone. You're meant to be part of a team. And when you do a lot of teamwork, people will work with you. But sometimes leaders got to stand alone. Sometimes it's really hard to step up and be the leader and start things that are new. Everybody who invents something new, they'll tell you that can't be done. They've told us we can't have a youth center in the hood. You can't be down there because bad things will happen. Our youth center is in a place, or was in a place on 7th Street, and they used to call it World War III because of all the shootings down there. We would stand in the youth center and we'd hear shootings outside. We've seen so many young people like Christian. Christian, I will carry his name far out. Now, back to the Saguaro. When the Saguaro finally dies and hits the ground, usually falls over, the Saguaro can have up to 6 tons of water. All right, so when that puppy falls, a lot of bad things can happen. In fact, there was some guy, I'll call him a turkey. I don't want to call people names, but the guy was drinking. He took a gun and decided to shoot one of the arms off the Saguaro. He shot the arm, and it came down, and it killed him. The guy was killed by the arm of a saguaro.